Let me kick it off here just to make it a little more formal. Some of you I know, some I don't. My name's Kevin Ridgely. I'm the current president of FEI Baltimore chapter. If you're members, great to see you. If you're not, consider reaching out to us. We're an organization that thrives on networking and resources. As you can imagine, this year has been a kick in the teeth where it's been hard to network, as you can imagine. And I got to give a lot of credit to the board. We could have kind of hunkered down and tried to survive the pandemic. And I think the board, I'll give them all the credit. They just said, we're going to find a way to make this fun, today being a good example. And we've had some great virtual meetings and done a good job of keeping everybody in touch. And I'm pretty confident in saying I think the end is near. It's like we see the light at the end of the tunnel. I don't know how soon, but Denise has told us the Tampa chapter actually had in-person meeting last month or this month. I think we'll probably finish out this year, maybe staying virtual, but I'm sure when we tend to lay low in the summer, but come September, I think we'll be back to real live meetings. And for those of you who aren't as familiar with us, we tend to have monthly meetings. We bounce back and forth between not-for-profits, small businesses, just businesses you may not know about otherwise. And it's really been a great run the last 4 years I've been involved, just finding businesses much like Oliver to, it just makes you really appreciate the area we live in. But to get things started officially, again, I want to thank everybody for setting this up. I think it's a unique opportunity for us to learn about a company, drink some good beer, and have some good fellowship. So we've been talking about introducing Justin Dvorkin, who's been talking here most of the time. He's one of the owners of Oliver Brewery, and Jason Williams, who's also on it. He's a sales director. Also, we could call him the beer man, either or. I think he'll answer both. But the plan today is we're going to have Justin and Jason give us a little overview, an introduction of themselves. We're going to try the first beer. Then they're going to work us, give an overview of how Oliver came to be, how it grew, and where it is today. And again, touching on some of the things that we touched on here in the first half hour about how they survived the pandemic and dealt with that. Then Justin has a virtual tour of the brewery that will be pretty informative. We can see how beer is made, how it goes from various ingredients to something we like to drink. And then again, beers will be interspersed through there, and then we'll end up with a Q&A and kind of go from there. If you do have some questions along the way, you can put them in the chat, and Denise will find the right times to bring them up to Justin and Jason. So with that, Justin, Jason, it's all yours.
Yeah, I'll kind of start it out. We doing a beer tasting, so before we all start talking and listening to what we have to say, let's raise a social. Start out with our wonderful pale lager. Let's crack this bad boy open, take a quick taste, and then we'll start a little journey with Oliver Brewing Company. So we're fortunate enough to be called Maryland's oldest brewery. We started in 1993 in downtown Baltimore, which is now 1993 was right across the street from brand new Camden Yards. We started in a little brew pub called the Wharf Rat in a 200-year-old building downtown Baltimore on Pratt Street, where Oliver Ales started. It was the old building with the blue parrot on the side, right as you pulled in, right off 95 north and south. But we brewed English ales. So in 1993, importing beer was real popular, and they opened an English brew pub and put a 7-barrel system in the basement of a brew pub, a 200-year-old building again, where they produce beer. And to think that we're the longest continual running brewery in Maryland is pretty awesome. We have over 125 active breweries in the state at this time, so it's pretty awesome. We can fast forward through the early pub days to 2008, where my boss, Justin Dvorkin, and his partner, Don Kelly, took over and early on named it Pratt Street Ale House. And I'll let Justin tell you a little bit about that.
Yep. So before we get started here, if everybody can raise up their their glasses here. Give a quick toast to Mr. Jason Williams. Him and his fiance just brought back their baby today from the hospital. So congrats to Jason, and thank you for being on this call with us at such short notice after that.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
That's
awesome.
So you know, as we talked about a little bit in the earlier discussion, I was looking to start a brewery in Maryland and was lucky enough to come across a place that was an existing brewery that was for sale. So it was a very quick intro into the market and into the industry. You know, Pratt Street Ale House was brewing beer there for many years before we came in. For reference, as we talk about our new equipment, they had a 7-barrel system, and our last year brewing, or the year that we took over, they brewed about 700 barrels of beer, which for on premise at a brew pub is nothing to be ashamed of. But we, you know, we've taken that number, and we're currently just a little under 7,000 barrels of beer at Oliver Brewing Company right now. In the years since we took over Pratt Street Ale House, we've opened multiple restaurants. So we also own the Ale House Columbia in Columbia, Maryland. We own the Park Tavern in Severna Park. We own the Five and Dime Ale House in Hamden. We own Donnelly's Dockside in Arnold, Maryland, and we own and we're opening another location called JB's in Severna Park. So the restaurant side of our universe has expanded greatly in that time, and along with that expansion comes a need for much more beer. So as the restaurants grew and as our need for distribution grew, we decided it was time to go ahead and make the leap and go into a full production facility. So we started looking around the city. We found a 12,000 square foot facility up in Bel Air, Edison. Made that move about a little over 6 years ago, and I've been cranking the beer out there ever since. It's great to stay in Baltimore City, and it's been a very interesting expansion process. But I think the next step that we wanted to do for you guys is do a little shared screen, take you for a quick walkthrough, kind of walk around the facility. You can get an idea of visual aspect of the equipment, what we do, and then we can take it from there. Does that sound good?
Yeah, so this would be a little fast forward from moving out of the basement to a bigger system. We went from a 7-barrel English brewing system to really an American-made 20-barrel brew house system where we brew over 600 gallons per batch. But we're going to go to its own building where there's 12,000 square feet, where we produce, again, about 7,000 barrels of beer for 4 states and the district.
And just for reference, for the measurements, a barrel of beer is 31 gallons. So we talk about a barrel, so a 7-barrel system or a 20-barrel system that we're on right now. You have 31 gallons to the barrel of beer. So the quick walkthrough as we get started here on the left, you're going to see our grain room and our mill. This is, the beginning of the process. All of our grain comes in from different suppliers. We have, English malts for English grain. We have, our German malts for German style. It really just depends what we're making. So all the ingredients are for the purpose of the brew that we're doing. The mill, the orange machine on your right, it's meant to just crack the grains open. It doesn't pulverize them. It doesn't smash them. It just breaks that outer husk so you can get access to the interior. So as we get into the brewing process, we can really soak those grains, convert those sugars, convert those fermentable sugars, and get everything going. At any given week, I mean, you're looking at the average on hand volume for the better part of a week there. Our next move here is going to be to install a silo, and silo grains will take our cost of goods down significantly We're just working our way up to that point at the moment. The setup has been working nicely for us for the amount that we've been growing. As we keep going here's our main brew house. Our brew house is made by a company called Kraftwerk. They're an American-made company. They're out of Michigan, right outside of Detroit. Their nice story was, as the auto industry was having a tough time in 2008, 2009, they hired a lot of out-of-work auto manufacturers that were skilled metal workers that needed jobs. And the auto industry was not doing what it needed to do. So they're the perfect guys to come in here and do some welding and make some beer tanks. So we believed in that story. We believed in the quality of what these guys were fabricating, and we flew out to Michigan and designed the system with them and got everything going. So what you're looking at is a 4-vessel 20-barrel system. The 4-vessel means that every vessel is built for purpose. There's no shared vessels. If you go to some breweries, you'll see vessels stacked on top of each other. It's a fine design for a pub or something like that, but not for real high volume production. So the fact that every vessel is built for purpose means that we can do back to back brews as soon as that first step of the process is moved along. So right now we're looking at the lauter tun. The mash tun was the first vessel. By the time this brew hits this lauter tun and we start rinsing these grains, the next brew can go right in behind it, and we can do 2 brews, we can do 3 brews, we can do whatever we need to do. So the process that you're looking at right now is called the Sparge process. We are rinsing hot water over the top of the grains to try to rinse all those good sugars out of the grains that we need for the beer process. So you go through and we collect it into the next vessel, which is going to be the boil kettle. The boil kettle is where you boil a beer for 60 minutes, 90 minutes, whatever the style calls for. And we add our hops and whatever else we're adding to kind of balance out the sweetness of the malt. So if we're doing a big West Coast IPA, you're going to have a lot of early additions. If we're doing a hazy IPA, they're going to be late additions. The earlier in the process that you add the hops, you get more bitterness. The later in the process you add the hops, you get more aroma and flavor. And then the fourth vessel here is the Whirlpool. The Whirlpool, it does what it sounds like. It kind of spins the beer. Everything goes in along the side. It spins it around, and that separates the liquids from the solids. So if there's any solids that are left over from the initial stages, that Whirlpool effect has them collect in the center, and then we pull the liquid off the side. So that's the brew house. That's where the first stage of the magic happens. Here's a wider view of our facility, so you can get an idea of the scale of the warehouse we're working in. Lots of can storage. To touch on everyone's Di Pasquale's conversation from earlier, in a prior life, this was Di Pasquale's, some kind of a catering warehouse for them. So that's one of the original lifetimes of this building. And when we took it over, it was a hub for ready ice. So it was an ice storage facility. The blue piece of equipment right here is what the beer goes through to get chilled down before it gets sent down to fermentation. The metal vessel right next to it is an inline hop back where we can infuse either more hops or spices or other ingredients into the beer. And this large vessel on the side, we just skip past what we use for sours. And then these little tanks is the pilot system we talked about. So if the guys want to experiment, if they want to play around with something, or if we just want to make a small batch, this little system here will make 2 kegs at a time. And we have fermenters for this for 2 kegs or for 4 kegs at a time. So it's good to play around and let the guys experiment and get the creative juices flowing. These tanks are a little bit larger than the ones that you just saw. This is our main fermentation room. So you're looking at 60 barrel, 40 barrel, and 20 barrel fermenters. So that's matching up to a single, a double, or a triple brew of what we're making. So, depending on what you have in your hands, something like, the Astro Life we were talking about, that could be a 20 or 40 barrel brew. Something like a Be More Hazy is going to be in those big 60 barrel tanks all the time. Barrel aging is a big part of what we do. So a lot of times in the spring and the winter, we are brewing to fill these bourbon barrels up, and that beer is going to patiently sit and wait until next year. So you'll start seeing these release in the in the fall. So you'll see October, November, December, these beers start coming out. And for our financial advisor conversation, think about the dollars and the cost of goods that you buy the ingredients for those beers, and it just sits there and does not generate any income for a full 12 months. So when you see a barrel aged beer on the shelf, you're paying for not only the cost of the raw materials in the barrel, but you're paying a little bit for the for the time that it takes to create that product. So the opportunity cost for those raw materials have been paid for long ago, and they haven't generated any income for months. This last view here, one of the beer happily fermenting away. One of the the natural byproducts that you see is CO2. So the bubbling that we see in these little airlock water buckets is CO2 coming out, and that means that we got a happy fermentation going along, and that everything's working and doing what it's supposed to be doing. There's our happy fermentation. Here's our packaging area towards the end of our tour here. So these are called bright tanks. Bright beer means beer that's ready to package. So the bright beer hits these tanks. It gets carbonated or nitrogenated, and then gets ready to go down the canning line. So here is our canning line. We are just about 3 million cans through this particular canning line. We got to that stage much sooner than we thought, which is a good problem to have, but it's been fantastic for us. We just upgraded it from a 4-head to a 5-head filler. We do everything we do is inline labeled. So the next stage is the inline labeler. Then it goes through a PackTech applicators. The PackTechs are those snap top handles that you guys are used to seeing at the stores. So it comes through there, gets filled, gets seamed in the last part on the canning line. It runs down this section that we're looking at right now. It gets labeled, and then it comes down the collection table, and they're weighed and tested. We test everything for dissolved oxygen content, CO2 levels, anything we could do. We test the seams on the can. So the quality control is a big part of what we do. Anyone can make a beer that tastes good the day it's packaged. The beauty or the real challenge is making a beer that tastes as good 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks later. That's where real production brewing comes in. It's not, there's a lot of forgiveness in a pub system, a pub scenario where you keg it and it's gone in 2 weeks. That forgiveness is a much different scenario when you guys go to your local store and you pick up our 6-pack that has 2 months of age on a warm shelf. It's our job to make sure that you're getting what you pay for in that scenario. That's our cold box. You're looking at pretty average week's order that's lined up in the middle there to go out to distribution. Hop storage on the right, fruit storage for different products that we make. And that's where the magic happens. That's the quick tour of Oliver Brewing Company. So coming from a 7-barrel brew house in the basement to our 12,000 square foot facility that we're in right now. And then I'll just pull up our website so we have a little background branding images. You guys can get familiar with it. And as much as Jason and my faces are wonderful, I guess you could stare at something else as we continue to talk about the other aspects of the industry. And for that, I'll stop talking. I'll let Jason talk about a beer.
Well, Justin, we have several questions in the chat. It's a good time.
Okay, that's fine. I don't have the chat thing, so I guess I'm missing questions. If you want to go ahead, yeah, let me know, just because I apologize. I don't see where the chat is.
Matt is asking, what is your most popular beer?
So it's an interesting question. By far, our most popular beer is Be More Hazy right now. Be More Hazy came out of the gates and has really done an amazing job for us. 206 IPA used to be our best selling beer. I'd say me and Jason go back and forth. He has we have a lot of belief in being more hazy. I think if our restaurants were open, 206 would be closer than it is right now because it was a big draft thing for us. But there's no competition. Be More Hazy is our number one seller.
Okay, and Andy would like to know, do you open restaurants for the main purpose of selling your beer versus running a restaurant?
when I talk to Jason about his sales goals, it depends on what day of the week. No, we open restaurants when we see a market and a need and a community that we want to get into, and we open restaurants when we have a feeling that the existing ones are at a point of very smooth status. We have a management team in place. They've been there for a long time. The reputation is correct. We usually, and then once it feels like the machine is running correctly, that's when we go to open a new restaurant. And it's got to be, sometimes the property's available, and sometimes it's the commute we want to get. Columbia, we wanted to get into Columbia specifically, so we're looking for that market. It just depends.
Okay, and Joe has asked what the definition of a West Coast beer is.
So a West Coast IPA is going to be your more traditional IPA that has that sharp bittering profile that you probably had in your beers in the past. So think Lagunitas, think Stone IPA. If you see some of those, some of those West Coast ones, Ballast Point, Sculpin, those are West Coast IPAs. And the new ones, the New England IPAs and the hazy IPAs are brewed for kind of the opposite. So they're a softer profile. The hops are added at the end. You're not bittering it. So I thought I saw somebody pop up now that I think I got the chat go, but for IBUs, you're not going for those bitterness units. You're adding the hops at a stage that you're only getting aroma and flavor. So the East Coast IPA or the New England IPA is going to be something that is not bitter, and a West Coast IPA is going to have some sharp balancing bitterness to it.
Yeah, stylistically, if you were judging on IPA, it's 45 to 65 IBUs, which is your bittering units in a beer. How bitter is your beer? And anywhere from 6 to 7.5% alcohol is an IPA.
Okay, and Michael is asking if you ever create special brews for restaurants and have them branded as their own house beer.
We do. We're happy to do that all the time. I think it depends. Do we brew something specifically? There aren't a lot of restaurants that can move a full batch volume of what we do right now. We have people. If it's a strong account, we have them come in and they'll come bring their bar managers and servers and do a pilot brew, and they'll take the 2 to 4 kegs that we produce on that. Or what we'll do is we'll brand something, we'll take something that we have and let them call, Be More Hazy, their house. Hey, to me, if you're buying the product and you want to call it, so I'd rather our name be on there just for the branding, but if they're going to buy it and they want a house beer and they're paying for it, I'm happy to let them call it whatever they want.
Okay, well, what are your thoughts on making an ale spiced with hot peppers? Curly, beer with a nice spice and hopefully the fruity pepper flavor coming through.
I think that there is a balancing act there. I would let Jason comment on that, but as the salesperson, he would.
I already answered the question.
I
typed it out.
There's a place for everything, and I think but again, there's a batch size for everything. I tell my guys they can make anything they want in the pilot system. You want to put habaneros, try to pull the fruity pepper spices, whatever you want to do. But if we're going to make 600 gallons of something, I need to have a confidence level. Jason and our distributors have to have a confidence level that it's going to move and that it's appropriate for that size of a batch. I've had some spicy beers that are very well done and very, very finessed. And then I've had some that I just don't even understand how somebody put it out there.
Okay, now Kim has a question. He says, is there research around trying to speed up that barrel aging process?
A lot of people have tried different things. I don't know if anyone's had any success that's more successful than just being patient. We've tried everything from temperature fluctuations to try to kind of swell and expand the wood. I think would be something I've heard of. I've heard of some people doing things that kind of shake them, or some people I've seen some machines, you put the barrel on it and it rolls it. So so the liquid is moving and more liquid's touching the surface. But then I see the guys that make the best barrel aged beers in the world, and they just say, here's my stack of barrels that are patiently waiting until I think they taste right. And, it's hard to, it's hard. If it worked that much better, I think the whiskey distilleries would be doing it already, because that's their whole hold up on their product turnover. And if the whiskey guys aren't doing it and they're letting it age, then, I feel like we're not going to find out anything we're not going to find out anything about barrel aging that, Old Forester hasn't figured out.
So did everybody enjoy their social lager? Take a second just to talk about it. With so many styles of beer and really trying to capitalize on your market share, you try to come up with styles that are either catchy, IPA-like, or something that it might be a little bit more old school. A lot of people drink Budweiser and Bud Light. So as a craft company, how can we compete with those guys? So social lager fits into that market. It's a lagered beer. It takes longer to make. It's cold fermented, which extends the brewing process from start to finish an extra month. But overall, we filter this product. We want it to be crisp and dry and clean. It's the kind of beer where you buy a 6-pack and you crush a 6-pack. So I think branding wise, it's a beautiful package. We went with a little bit of an old school vibe to it. But overall, it's, our third best selling product. And, I think it fits into our lineup really well. I know you guys want to move on to the next beer, which I've seen a couple of you guys already drinking it, but let's all pull out Be More Hazy. It's our beautiful 8% hazy. It's more of an East Coast IPA. It's a double IPA, which is meaning over 7.5% alcohol. This one we hit with 2 different dry hops. We hit dry hopping early in the process of fermentation to give it more of a hop saturation, more of a hop flavor in your mid palate. And then we finish it off with another dry hop, which really increases the aroma in the product. So overall, we're looking for a nice yellow to straw colored hazy beer. We want it to have a nice, almost yellow glow to it. And we want it to smell notes of tropical fruits and berries. So I think, as you drink this beer, you'll see how soft it is and easy to drink for how big it is at 8%, and why it continues to lead Oliver Brewing in sales.
I'll let you guys take your first couple sips of Be More Hazy. You can see why it does what it does for us. It's pretty amazing, pretty amazing product, and it came at just the right, it kind of hit the market and took off at the right time for us. It would have 2020 would have been a tough year without Be More Hazy doing what it does, and also really letting, turning customers on that we make that, the New England IPA is it's a very popular style right now. So we put that beer out, and I think it changed everyone's perspective. Oh, Oliver makes a really good New England IPA, and then it's only added it's only added sales onto our limited release New England IPAs because I think this paved the way for it, which is a nice thing. So just a little bit more. We started as obviously a brew pub, mainly producing beer for ourselves, a little bit of distribution between Baltimore, transition to a full-scale manufacturing facility that you just saw. We send beer at the moment to Maryland, DC, Virginia, Delaware, and Pennsylvania. So, we're a regional brewery at this point. I'd say we're a mid-sized regional, still on the smaller end of the mid-size. There's guys that are that certainly produce more liquid than us, but I think we're big enough to be significant, but small enough to be nimble is how I like to have conversations with the guys. If we have an idea that we want to throw out there, there's no layers of upper management that has to go through. And there's, it's not like we're making thousands of barrels at a time. We can try the experimental things. So I'm pretty happy with the size that Oliver Brewing Company is. We're always looking to expand. We're always looking to have some more volume, but we're pretty happy with how the brand has grown. And I think that saturation in those territories is more of a priority for us over expanding into wider territories at the moment. So that's what we're trying to accomplish for growth, is just to be in more places in these markets that we're already in. An interesting area for growth, though, with the, I think in the beer industry, and there's plenty of other, in the end, we're just manufacturing. The product that we make is fun, but we're just a manufacturing facility. So co-packing and contract brewing is an area that we really have been able to expand what we do, expand, our sales growth, our top line sales, keep our guys brewing, moving, in the alcoholic and non-alcoholic departments. So we make nitro cold brewed coffee for several coffee companies now. We make nitro coffee. If you've had any from Ceremony Coffee Roasters, that's coming from Oliver Brewing Company. If you had any of the coffee from Vent Coffee Roasters, that's coming from Oliver Brewing. Aveley Farms is coming from us. And Peak from Annapolis is coming from us. And then we have a meeting with the guys from Ekaben. They make a Vietnamese iced coffee. They're coming in tomorrow for their first pilot batch. So it's been it's an interesting thing to analyze the equipment that you have, the facilities, the resources that you have, and start having these conversations. Well, what else can we put into cans? We have a craft botanical soda company that we're producing stuff for. So it's a way to grow our company while keeping Oliver, again, a comfortable size. A lot of breweries that have overexpanded are the ones that got in trouble, sending beer into Florida and Carolina and California when they had no support system in place to keep that beer moving on the shelves, to make sure that you guys, the end user, is getting fresh beer on their shelves. Or if you have an issue, that we have, again, the boots on the ground to go and resolve that issue and get fresh beer into a store. That's hard to accomplish in multiple states away. So the idea of analyzing the investment that we've made into facility and equipment, and trying to get creative as to how else can I use this equipment to produce some income, is a big part of what we've done over the past couple of years, and a big part of what got us through 2020. Grocery and liquor stores increased, and that's what helped us really keep going. And some of these breweries that have big outdoor spaces, and the farm breweries and all those guys, we made contact with the guys at Falling Branch and a couple of these places, and that's where we were able to keep our tanks full. The more days that we have an empty tank, that's not how the efficiency just goes down and down and down. So it's something that I think we've learned a lot about in the past few years.
Justin,
Yep.
We have a question. With the rise in popularity of hard seltzers, is Oliver or any other craft brewing companies that you know of looking to create any?
So we talked about that in a little bit in the early kind of intro room. So we also make Chesapeake cider. So if you guys see the Chesapeake Cider Company anywhere, that's an Oliver Brewing Company product also. We launched that recently. It's a young product for us, and we believe very strongly in its growth and its future and its craft appeal. And our decision, me and Jason talked about the cider or the seltzer ideas and launching that. And we just felt that Chesapeake Cider was too young for us to put energy and effort into launching a third brand like a seltzer. And we talked about maybe launching it as an offshoot of Chesapeake Cider or Chesapeake Seltzer, try to make something that worked with it. But we decided that that effort was better put into growing the cider brand and not. I feel like you have to understand also you have to understand the end consumer. And in my experience, the seltzer consumer is not searching for a craft option as hard as some of the other ones. I feel like a cider drinker wants a craft option and a beer drinker does. I feel like the seltzer drinkers want White Claw. They want Truly. I don't think they're shopping for the. We've seen a couple other local breweries that have tried it, and I just don't know how. I think it's good for a shot here and there. I just don't know if it's a long-term sustainable growth product.
Yeah, certain products reach a certain price tag and the consumer won't pay for it. And when you're battling the Bud Light seltzers, the Corona seltzers, the Trulies, you know, that $15.99 12-pack, to do the backwards math to actually what it takes to sell it, to get it to the retailer for you to buy it $15.99, it's really hard to even fathom selling a product for so cheap. So I think the seltzer game, especially, is that 12-pack grocery store drinker, which doesn't really scream craft beer.
Have you guys thought about doing any on-demand brewing partnerships and small batches with home brewers on the topic of keeping the tanks full?
We've done so. We do a lot of contract brewing. We've never done anything like with home brewers. We've done some competition type things. We've invited a couple people in to scale up a batch, but nothing consistently. But for contract brewing, we do. If you guys have most of the Brewers Art cans, the only thing we don't make is Resurrection. That's made in Sly Fox in Pennsylvania. But if you've had Beasley, if you've had their Zeke's Coffee Porter, if you've had their Bird House a couple of years ago, so we make the cans for Brewers Art, for Falling Branch Farm Brewery, for Forward Brewing in Annapolis. We just signed them up for a contract. We're brewing next week, so we're trying to be a resource for some of the smaller breweries that need capacity more so than the pilot batches. We try to invite in like accounts, like a really good bar for us or a really good liquor store. We invite them in to brew something as kind of a reward for their support.
Okay, and Peter has a question across your sub-brands. What is the most expensive part of your brewing process? And also within your go-to market process?
The most in our sub-brands or in all the brands?
The question is sub-brands.
In a sub-brand, as if a contract brand, labor is always going to be a very, very, very high cost. So, and
packaging goods.
Yeah, that's the main thing. So these cans, we're not the only brewery that switched 100% to cans in March of 2020. Every brewery switched 100% to cans in March of 2020. So the commodity market that was already stretched super thin, these cans took months to get pre-COVID. We replaced our orders 3-4 months in advance, and it was reliable, but it was still expensive. We're paying 11 cents for the body, 4 to 5 cents for the lid, 7 cents or so for the label. These can bodies shot up to 15, 16 cents immediately when COVID started. And it sounds like when you say cents, it adds, there's 24 cans in a case. And our price set to retailers is set in advance. Brewing is not something where you can just change the price on a whim. You have to submit that price increase to your distributor and to the state and register it. So it's one of those things that the commodity market can hit your margins real quick, and the cans have been our number one nightmare of 2020. And I can tell you it was the number one conversation between me, Jason, and our operations manager this week.
And one more, going back to your start, what's the difference between an English style brewing system and a US system? And do you still have your English style system?
No, so the English style system was the one that was at Pratt Street. It's a very specific way of brewing. One of the main differences would be the fermenters. They're open top fermenters. They're not conical bottoms. They use one specific type of yeast that likes that. The yeast is harvested from the top of that open fermenter and then put into the other tanks. So it's very, very good at doing one thing. That's why before we made great English style ales, and sometimes when we try to drift off of that model, the beers weren't as dialed in as we'd like them to be. The brew house itself had no heating element in the mash tun, so it was a very specific way to brew, where you had to use the hot water to hit your temperature initially. It was a direct fire brew kettle, which means that literally there's a fire underneath it. It wasn't a steam jacketed system, and then you would cycle the beer around. So essentially you would pump it with a direct fire on the bottom to keep it even. So you had to be careful about caramelization of the sugars. It's a very different way to brew. The system we're on now is state of the art. It can make English beers as good as our old system does, but it makes social lager like the way it's supposed to, and it makes the IPAs the way it's supposed to. It's there was some old school beauty to the old system, but I would not want to go back to that way of brewing.
We have a lot of questions coming up. Have distributors in the entire chain worked with you and been more friendly in light of COVID and those increased raw material costs?
Not in regards to the raw material costs. To be candid, we did submit a slight price increase as we got to the middle of the year, when COVID just kept on going. When we got to 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, we said, okay, we just can't keep eating these margin increases. And I still think we were a much slighter increase than I've seen from other breweries. The distributors, I would say, we're not one of those breweries that talks down about our distribution partners. I think they got hit hard too. You're talking about a company that at the blink of an eye had a warehouse full of kegs that they could not sell the next day because all of their customers were closed. So they had a ton of dollars sitting on their shelves that had to go down the drain. And I don't think me or Jason blame them for their hesitancy to restock with pre-COVID levels of draft beer. So we're still fighting that fight right now. Hey, we need 16 kegs. We need 20 kegs of this on hand because we're selling out or running out. I think they'd rather run out than be stuck like they got before. So I would say that they worked with us and they've been friendly. That I wouldn't say anything negative about it, but I think that the beer distributors, they got hit. The liquor distributors, I think, did okay because the liquor stores did so well. Beer distributors that had lots of kegs sitting on their shelves had some insurance claims to call in.
Okay, and last one in the chat for now. How has Guinness moving into the neighborhood-ish changed your strategy, if it has at all?
I wouldn't say it has at all. I think that there's such a behemoth. The people that ran Guinness before ran Guinness. I've been to the brewery. It's beautiful. It's one of those things that I think it's great for heavy seas because they're right down the road. So I'm sure their tasting room traffic increased because of it, I would assume. But I don't know. I've been there. I've liked the pilot things I've had from them. I wouldn't say it's affected us outside of, we make nitro beers, but they're not making a lot of locally made nitro beers. It's one of those things that when you talk about the support local aspect and the different things like that, you're talking about a company like Diageo that has so much money. They opened that facility, I don't want to say for fun, but they owned it from previous days and were trying to find a use for a building they already owned and built the biggest brewery anyone's ever seen around here. So it's just kind of like when you're spending your dollars these days, just, there's a small guy with a brewery tasting room in the Federal Hills or the Cantons of the world that had a tougher 2020 than I think Diageo did.
Yeah, and Guinness is the second largest brewery in Maryland now.
Well, it's Flying Dog, right? First.
Yeah, Flying Dog still at 100,000 barrels, but Guinness did reach 40,000 barrels last year.
Yeah, so we make, for reference, we make about 7,000 barrels. So flying, when you see Flying Dog, so just in reference of the scale of us compared to a Flying Dog does 100,000 barrels a year. We do 7, and I'm proud of that 7. That's all. We used to do 700. Now we do 7,000. So I'm not, that's where I say we're small enough to be nimble, but we're big enough to be significant. Flying Dog is a big brewery.
Yeah, we run a 8-9 man team total. So.
Just going through a couple of our other points. The contract brewing was an important part to maximizing opportunities for efficiency, purchasing, the shipping of raw material contracts. And I think this is any business this could be applied to, or any manufacturing operation. It's shocking when we first got going and some of our suppliers would hit us with a fraction of a cent increase, fraction of a few cents per pound, whatever it was. My reaction to that in an initial year, or a 1% increase, like, maybe a delivery company that used to charge 9% wants to go to 10%. In other years, I'd look at those fractional increases and kind of shrug it off as, all right, whatever, life goes on. When you scale, you have to understand how exponential it gets. When it's a 2 cent increase or 4 cent increase on your cans, and you make 1,000 cans, okay, it didn't change your life that much. When you make 3 million cans, like we just eclipsed, it's thousands of dollars that fraction of a cent just did, or the 2 cents that you just got. So it's one of those things that it could be the difference of your equipment maintenance protocols, you just don't know where you need that 10,000, 30,000, 5,000, whatever it is. So for every time someone comes to chip away on those margins and say, hey, I need 0.5%, I need 5 pennies on this. It could be challenging, and they're always looking to do it. They're always looking for that next opportunity to hit you with it. So you have to proactively do the opposite. So we're always having conversations with our grain suppliers. Hey, I bought 100 bags of Pilsner grain last year. I'm going to buy 1,000 bags this year. What would you do for me? Theoretically, if I did 2,000, what would you do for me? And that way, me and Jason and our operations manager have those dollars right in front of us, and we can make decisions that if we deploy more capital into a bulk purchase, how much money would we save? Would we get that return on investment in 4 months, in 6 months? Does it take a year to get that return on investment? And those are the decisions we're making every day. How are we shipping our hops? Even the shipping costs are expensive. So you got to decide, well, if I get 10 boxes of hops, 10 boxes, it's $1,000 purchase. But if I can put 30 boxes on that same pallet and pay that shipping cost once, instead of paying that shipping cost next week and the next week and the next week, is it worthwhile to make those changes? And I don't think these are brewery specific decisions that are being made. I think it's something that it hits every level of manufacturing and every level of business, that you have to constantly, you got to fight for those few cents the same way your suppliers are going to start fighting you for their few cents, or you're going to find yourself out of balance pretty quick.
Justin, Cheryl has a question. Who comes up with and develops new flavors or types? And do you base these developments on competing with someone else's version?
It's a bit of a team effort. We have a lead brewer, Chris. And a lot of people have brewing backgrounds. I have a brewing background. Even our operations manager understands recipe formulation. So a lot of the time, it'll start with a style, and the style, the name, the artwork is the vetting process. Jason's always in that conversation. So Jason will be, is this viable? What if we put out recently? Is it too similar? Is it too, off the wall? Whatever it is. And a lot of these things happen as a team. So there's not one person doing it. And we have a board at the brewery that people can put up their ideas. It could be your style idea, or it could just be a name. So if they put a name on there as a starting point, it could be, that could be all we need to get the ball rolling. One of the things we touched on before is operating the brewery with the behind the scenes perspective of restaurant ownership. I think that's important. It's an interesting thing to have that perspective. So a lot of times people are producing their product and they've never been on the other side of that fence purchasing that product. So you could say, hey, I brewed this beer. It's the best beer in the world, and I'm charging you $300 for it. But you don't know what it's like to be that consumer purchasing it for $300 and trying to pass it off to their customers for $20 4-packs or for $12, $13 pints in their facilities. And that production and distributor, the brewery side and the retail side is an interesting advantage that me and Jason can have. Jason also worked in distribution, and he worked in some big off-premise stores for a while. So we're coming at it with that background, with that knowledge of what we, the experience of okay, well, what are we purchasing for my own restaurants? What reps am I gravitating towards, and price points am I hesitating on? It's always an important thing for us to get into. And with that, I don't know, Jason, is it Be More Sour time?
Yeah, let's finish off with Be More Sour. I think it's a good transition coming off of Be More Hazy. We found a brand in Be More Hazy with branding, the brightness of the labels, kind of the fun Batman style background with kind of the Be More popping out of off the can. It really kind of sets up presence for the liquid inside, and people love the hazy so much. What's the next most popular style right now, especially in the younger market, is sour. So to capitalize on that, we took a couple of old school collaborations that we had done in the past with another local brewery, but took Inertia Creeps, the best two styles. It was a blackberry and a raspberry kettle sour, 5%. So we just kind of blended the two together, took the best of both worlds, and created Be More Sour. So it's a little bit different of a product. It uses lactobacillus in I guess, Justin, that goes into not the boil.
We have like a separate vessel. So essentially you have the brew house that you looked at. We actually took what was an old open fermenter, and we have a dedicated souring vessel. So we keep that off to the side. So we, when you have an active bacteria like that, you want to keep it separate. So we keep it in that separate vessel. And then when it's soured and we hit the right pH, we bring it back into the boil kettle. You boil it, and that kills off that bacteria, and then it's fermented out like normal. So it goes to the fermenter like normal once that bacteria has been deactivated.
Right. So we use that process when it goes to fermentation. It ferments out to 5% alcohol, but in that we add the blackberry and raspberry. Offers a nice tart, almost thirst quenching flavor. Leaves a little bit of acidity residuals on the palate, but kind of leaves you thirsting for that next sip. And it's kind of the unique thing to our 12% or 12-ounce can lineup is, we want the beers to make you want to drink another one. So I think we really hit it with drinkability goes a long way in your core products where you want the consumer to come back and buy it again. So introduce Be More Sour.
Yeah, as Jason said, sours and the hazies are really, really popular right now. So again, I think you're hitting, it's not so much trying to make all these beers so that one consumer, there's the beer nerds like us of the world that I want to try everything. But I think we make the sours for the sour people and the hoppy, the bitter ones for them, and we try to make sure that we're covering all the bases, and that each of the styles are done appropriately. I think the mixed 6-pack that you guys got is a great product. I mean, that's a great a great example of the skill set of the team on our production team, and at least in my personal opinion, if you guys go and you support a bunch of breweries around here and go take a drive out to a farm brewery, or go hit the city and go over to see the guys at Monument City, or go see the guys, over, anywhere else, depending on what area you guys are in. Try their lager, try their IPA, try a sour, try a dark beer, and did all of them come off to you like they're hitting on those styles? There's quality there. Then you could feel pretty confident that you're in a great place, because anyone can, again, make one thing well. If you make the full spectrum with some finesse, that's a skill set right there.
Justin, we have a couple of questions in the chat. As you grow in the velocity of units produced, at what point would you potentially decide to attempt to lock down the future costs of the inputs to your brewing and canning process, e.g. aluminum, hops, etc., through tools such as future contracts?
So we're at a pretty interesting stage now. So I think that question is tied to, on the raw material side, it's tied to your SKUs. So do you have a workout, like a workhorse, like a Be More Hazy, that we have the data and we see how it's performing and we project out its expansion and we know it's not going away? Now I'm confident I can contract those hops in bulk for a year, 2 years, 3 years, try to save some money or secure a higher quality product, because I can commit to more. That's where I think it depends on the SKU for the raw materials. That's part of the challenge. So as you commit to bulk, if consumer tastes change, then you could be left. So by example, we used to make a lot of the English style beers, and they were much more in favor. We contracted years out on hop crops, because that's people are growing them they're planting acreage based on sales. Those beers have kind of, I think they still do well, but they're not the trend of the moment. And me and Jason are sitting on thousands of dollars in English hops that we don't have a home for at the moment. And we don't want to brew a product that we don't have a confident sales route for, just for the sake of using those raw materials. So at the moment, it's just dollars on our balance sheet at the moment until we can figure it out. Now, something like a can, that's tied to your entire existence. So that's something that you want to go further out. I mean, we could do. I think you go to anything. Energy. We sign contracts based on gas usage. We try to get our best rates on that. The boiler runs, 24/7 pretty much at our brewery. Take the no-brainers and check them off the list first. Raw materials. We shop label companies, trying to make sure that we can get the best results on our labels. But I guess as the quick answer to that question, it would just be, if you're going to commit to bulk purchasing for the sake of your cost of goods and your savings, make sure you understand the future life of that product. So the future life of that SKU has to match up with your financial commitments. Otherwise, you're going to think you're saving money, and then in the end, you will not have used up the raw material, and you'll be sitting there with money on the shelf.
Okay, and I think we have a rhetorical question, but someone wants to know, residual acidity on the palate is nice. How do you avoid residual pounds on the stomach?
Hit the Peloton.
Yeah, that's there's certain realities that we can change, and there's certain realities that we can't. But we also make a beer called Be More Active. Be More Active is a nice, fluffy, light, citrusy beer. It's only 4% alcohol, and it's much less calories than the Be More Hazy. I don't know, if anyone on this team could figure out how to do the low calorie beers right, then we will have a much better financial conversations to have in the future. you guys, if there's any other questions, you let me know. I think I covered a lot of the bases that we had talked about. We appreciate the time to share the story of our brand. Our tasting room at the moment is open to public on Saturdays, 12 to 4. If you want to come in and have a beer, we have some outdoor tables. We want to expand on those hours soon. We have our full lineup of beers at all the restaurants. If you don't see our beers at your local liquor store, tell them that they need to bring them in. And me and Jason we're always available. So I mean, it's the way we run the company. If you message us on Facebook, that's you're getting answers from us. If you come by the brewery, you're going to see us there. So we're happy to be involved with the consumers that buy our product.
Justin, how about non-alcoholic brews? Is that anything Oliver is interested in?
We were looking at that. So the machine that makes the hard seltzers that we were looking at, one of the ways it could do it is you essentially brew a high strength beer, and then it separates out the water and just base alcohol, and you're left with a non-alcoholic beer. To produce something, I think I have to buy in and believe in it 100% for us to really get behind it. I personally don't understand the growth in the non-alcoholic beers that much, only in the sense I get not drinking and all that, but I guess I reach for something else that's non-alcoholic if I'm going for. I just don't know how much market share there is, because there are some companies like Active Brewing and a couple of the big boys that make it. Lagunitas, I think, makes a non-alcoholic now. So again, it's something that I'd be interested in making it. I just don't know that there'd be enough demand to make a lot.
Yeah, sometimes when you look at segment growth and this is the fastest growing segment, non-alcoholic, well, it's the fastest growing segment of maybe 0.5% of the whole market. So it could shoot up 200%, but it still only meet less than 1% of the total volume the beer industry offers. So sometimes you got to pick. Again, we're always picking our battles, and non-alcoholic January is I do not root for dry January.
Yeah, I try to use our restaurant. I mean, the restaurants are a tool for us. It's market research. What people are asking for and what's selling out quick is a unique thing for us, that we have that tool. And I'm in the restaurants every day, and I just haven't heard the customers clamoring for a wider selection. We have one or we have two, and I just don't see those cases flying.
Okay, I think Justin and Jason, this has been great. It really has. We've been looking forward to this. I really appreciate the board members that put this together. And truth be told, to the rest of you, a couple of us board members went out and did a dry run to the tasting room and got a tour. And I'm just really impressed with the whole operation. I think it was very enlightening to hear how this all works. Seems like you guys got your finger on the pulse and are situated really well.
Thanks. I appreciate it. We love the industry a lot. There would be, I would honestly say it's like anything else, that if you have a backup plan, you go that direction. I haven't had a backup plan since I first started home brewing years ago. This was it. So, it's easier to continuously re-educate yourself on the process and the industry when it's something you enjoy.
Yeah, I'm jealous a little bit. I mean, I've enjoyed my jobs over my career, but to go to a job where you're making beer, I mean, it's and I tell you, something really impressed me. In my prior life, I was responsible for growing a retail business across the country, and I kept clamoring to one of our acquisitions to expand the footprint, and it stuck with me to this day. I heard it 20 years ago. It was, Kevin, you don't expand the footprint until you push your foot down as far as you can where you already are, because you know that market and you know that you can service that market. And it stuck with our growth. And that was exactly what you said, that until we saturate where we are, why we want to go somewhere else. And
yeah.
I'm impressed. It seems like you have a great strategy and a good product. I didn't think I'd like the sour, but it's settling very nicely.
Nice, thanks.
Well, anyway, one last thing, there may be a few more questions, but typically when we have an event like this, we like to offer up making a donation to our sponsor's favorite charity. So if you can reach out to me, you have my email over the next couple of days, we'll be willing to make a contribution in the name of Oliver Brewing to a charity that you'd like. Okay. Are there any other, there may be, Denise, do you have any final questions out there?
I think there was one last question. Is there any ESG ethos to your brand or brewing process, or is ESG a future hurdle to overcome?
I'm not sure what ESG is.
Peter, do you want to unmute and voice your question?
Did we lose Peter?
It's more environmental, social, and governance. Is there any element that you're trying to overcome as many portfolios and other elements of our, kind of the investment environment, try to assess themselves on where they stand on how their activities impact the environment? Social scenarios and or the governance of your own company.
Sure. So the environmental impact, I think, is something that that is tied right into the craft beer production industry. I mean, for years, I think that it's been one of the most environmentally conscious industries. Going back a while. For us personally, it's really understanding efficiencies and waste. Everyone, I don't know if most people are familiar or not, but at most breweries, you partner with a local farmer, and that farmer, all of our spent grain, none of that goes into the trash. The farmer comes, he collects all that, and he feeds it. It's free feed for him to feed to his cattle or his pigs or whatever he's raising. The spent coffee grounds, he takes them as fertilizer. There's a lot of different options that we can proceed with. Our equipment, and a lot of our equipment design is meant to be as efficient as possible. We have a single boiler loop. Everything is steam. It's a high efficiency boiler. So really, as far as off what we're putting off, it's pretty controlled, and we're not bringing in every. I guess in my experience, with everything that we use has to be food grade, and by nature, everything that we use being food grade usually is pretty environmentally sound, because it has to break down. It's got to be a citric acid based compound, or it can't be something that would have a long-term effect, because it has to break down if it touches a food contact surface. The social side, I think there's no end to that. The simplest thing I could say is being a good neighbor to the people in our city. We do fundraising projects for the Baltimore Bartenders Guild, for the out of work bartenders. We work with Bel Air Edison on any fundraising projects that they're on. Archbishop Curley's next to us. We try to make sure our messaging is always positive. We try not to joke around with, some people put out beers that are joking with other people's culturally sensitive topics that we try not to play in any of those scenarios, because it just doesn't translate well. I hope that answered that.
Yeah, I think we went through the questions, and that was great. I really appreciate it, Justin and Jason. Really appreciate you showing up. I'm sure you can't wait to get, well, I guess you're home, but to take time and enjoy the new baby. And congratulations again. And thank you guys very much for allowing us to learn more about you and make it a really exciting FEI meeting for us.
Yeah, no problem. We're happy to, and enjoy the beers.
Yeah, that's been great. Thank you, guys.
It was really great. Thank you so much.
No problem, guys.
Congratulations on the new baby.
Thank you.
Get some sleep.
Thank you.